Okay, then let us consider the actual note 1. So in this section, we will talk about some topics like we want to talk to the computer somehow, and then we want to store certain information with something called variables. So we will consider those two topics. Okay, we want to talk to the computer somehow, and then we want to ask some simple task to a computer, and then we want to store the data in some simple way. And so what is programming? And there are many definitions, and Michael Dawson, the author of the Python programming for the absolute beginner, said it is getting your computer to do stuff. That means you can think of your computer as an incredibly fast and highly obedient but extremely unimaginative assistant. Okay. But it won't do anything unless you give it a precise instructions. It cannot read your mind. It cannot guess. Okay? You need to provide the precise instructions. Okay? So programming is similar. Okay? You can think of programming as writing a recipe, okay, or set of instructions so that your assistant can do some heavy liftings for you. Okay. So today we are going to study two fundamental ways to get your computer to do stuff. One is we will learn how to make it talk back to us, which is called output. And then in this note, we will study how to give it a short-term memory to hold some information, which we call variables. So we will consider how to make some outputs from your computer, and then we will study how to define variables. And those two are very important topics, very fundamental topics, actually. And as I said, programming is not a magic. So anyone can learn to program with practice. And a computer does not guess what you mean or what you want. Okay? It possesses zero intuition. So you need to provide the exact instruction. This is important. So you must be precise. So you must follow the rules exactly. And so computers do exactly what you tell them to do, okay? And your intention is not recognized by the computers, okay? If you are just accustomed to the AI tools like ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude, they may have some, user interface that can handle this portion, okay? But the programming itself is different from this the intention reading. You cannot read your minds. You cannot understand your intention. So you need to provide the precise instruction. And every code has a bug. It has some, and this, when I say bugs, that means the errors. Okay. Finding or correcting errors will be called debugging. And debugging is not a sign of a failure. Every code has a bug. Okay. So if you write a code, okay, if you make a code, and most of the time will be spent on this debugging part. So that is natural, okay? So if you have any problems, a debugging error, so if you have some errors in your code, that is fine. And what you need to do is you need to practice so that you can reduce the time on this debugging. Okay? That's what you need to do. Yeah, programming is not magic. Programming is not magic, but many students, even I sometimes use the generative AI tools like Gemini or ChatGPT sometimes. And these days, they can make many nice programs for you. So you might think that why do I need to study how to program or Python, okay? Because the ChatGPT may write a Python code for you, right? Then you might think like this, okay, if you have regarding, it's like a driving license, okay? So some of you may have some driving licenses. Now these days, some cars have some fancy tools like automatic driving facilities. So if you sit inside the car, then it can automatically drive to the destination. You don't have to touch anything, right? And then do we have to study how to drive or something like that kind of question? Well, I think even though this automatic driving or self-driving is available these days, if you know how to drive, then it will be better in many situations, especially when you have encountered some errors or problems. Then your driving skill may, be helpful in those situations. So if you know how to make a program yourself, and if you know the syntax, the structure of the Python languages, then even though you can make a code through the ChatGPT or Gemini, you can take advantage of this, okay? So anyway, you need to know basic parts of the programming so that when Gemini or GPT gave you some wrong programs, you should handle how to fix those, okay? You should be able to tell whether the code from the ChatGPT is correct or consistent with your goal. Okay? If you do not know the syntax or structure of the Python language, you cannot check those. Anyway, in this class, we will study some basic core concepts of the Python to a little bit advanced topics like the object or object-oriented programming. So we will consider all those topics for 4 weeks. Okay? So when you make a program, as I said, making a program is similar to making a recipe of something. Okay? So when I say a program, okay, usually program has a main structure, okay, some outline of the program. That outline of the program is called an algorithm, the algorithm. And this algorithm is kind of a recipe, some logical step-by-step sequence of instructions to accomplish a certain task, okay? And in case of this recipe, the algorithm, especially in Python language, the order matters. So your computer will read your instructions from the top line to the bottom, okay, line by line, and then it will perform certain tasks, okay, asked by that line of your recipe. And your computer does not skip any line unless it is told to do so there won't be any skipping. So if you write a recipe, then your computer will perform the task line by line without skipping. And if your instruction is wrong in any sense, I mean, you may have a typo, okay, or if you made some wrong instruction, then your computer, depending on the situation, your computer will stop, okay, and then it may complain with some error messages. And depending on the situation, it may proceed with some warnings. Sometimes it may stop with some error message. Sometimes it may stop without any error messages at all. But anyway, your instruction must be precise. So here is an example of an algorithm. Suppose that I want to withdraw, say, 50,000 won from my bank account. Okay, so suppose that I'm using my ATM. Then here are the order of my actions. First, I need to insert my bank card into the ATM, and then I need to select cash withdrawal, and probably I need to type some PIN numbers, 4-digit or 6-digit PIN numbers, and then choose the correct amount. Choose the account type. Well, in Korea we have just a checking account, but if you came from, say, United States, then you may have, say, checking account, savings account, and some other accounts, or some joint accounts. There may be many accounts, so you need to choose one account. And then you need to type the amount you want to withdraw. And then if you take your bank card back, then, well, it depends on your bank, but usually you get your bank account, and then your ATM will give you the cash, right? And then, depending on the situation, you may have the receipt if you select to take the receipt. So this is the order of actions if I want to withdraw, say, 50,000 won from my bank account. So the algorithm, the computer programs are like this. If you want to do some task, okay, you need to write down each task line by line, okay, and then your computer programs will perform one by one. Now, when you make a program, and if this is your first time, okay, and if I give you any assignment, then please try to write down this algorithm like this. I mean, you need to write a recipe of your actions. Some people just sit in front of the computers and start typing. That's not a good behavior. Okay? So if you are newcomer to this programming world, usually you need to write a recipe somehow. Okay? And if each statement can be translated into the programming language in one line there, then at that point you can start the typing. Okay? Like this. So if you have some task, please split your task into several pieces. And if each piece can be translated with a single line, then at that point you can start the typing. Otherwise, you need to simplify your task a little bit further. So please follow this. Okay? Otherwise, you will spend more time in front of a computer debugging your problems. So what is a programming language? It is a shared vocabulary. It is a set of predefined comments agreed upon by many programmers and the computer. Okay? So syntax is the grammar of the code. Okay? And this syntax is the strict set of rules governing how commands must be structured and formatted. And as I said, computers have zero flexibility with grammar. So even a single missing comma or bracket or even a single space may cause a problem, may cause an error message, and may break your program. So even single space or even single tab key may cause a problem in Python. Okay? So for human being, if I write down some English words in some different order, in some wrong order, or some long inaccurate mark symbol, human beings may understand the intention of this sentence. Okay? But computers are different. You must you must follow the rules exactly as agreed among the programmers. Okay? You cannot change any symbol. Okay? You cannot change even the lowercase or uppercase. Those characters will be distinguished in Python. So if you do not follow the rule, computers will immediately clash. In most cases, if the situation is serious. If the situation is not serious, it will do something, but the result may not be what you wanted. That is actually more dangerous in that case. If your computer crashes and if the computer stops, then you will recognize that, okay, there is some problem and you can fix the problem. But if the problem is not that serious and if the computer program does not stop and generates a certain output without any warning or error message, it is more dangerous. There are many types of languages, programming languages, and one simple distinction will be this: some low-level language and high-level language. So when I say low-level language, then that is very friendly to the machine itself. When I say high-level language, it is close the convenient for the human beings. And there are some low-level languages like just machine language or assembly language. If you came from computer science, then probably you learned these, okay? Especially the assembly language. Okay. The machine language, so machines can recognize only 0 and 1, on and off. So if everything is written using 0 and 1s, okay, then machine can easily recognize the task or commands, okay? But in case of human, okay? And assembly is very similar to that 0 and 1s. It is a little bit better than 0 and 1s, but anyway, so those are, so if your program is written, okay, directly using 0s and 1s, I will show some example in the next slide, then those are low-level language. But the problem is that if everything is written with 0s and 1s, it is very difficult for human beings to recognize, to understand the meaning of those expressions. Human beings want to recognize, want to read the programs, okay, as their own languages. So some languages allow that kind of expressions. So you write down some expressions similarly to the English, okay? And those are Python, R, Java, C, C++, C#, and those other languages also, okay? And there are many other languages around the world. So in case of high-level language, for human beings, it is easy to read and understand. The problem, the machines cannot recognize those. Machines do not know English, machines do not know Koreans, okay? So if you write down the program using this Python, R, C, somehow we need to convert them to the languages that your machines can understand. Okay? That translation part should be introduced, okay, in case of the high-level language. But in case of the low-level language, it is difficult for human beings, but since it is very machine-friendly, machine can read this and understand this task directly, okay, when the programs are written by machine languages or the assembly languages. But anyway, there are these two types of languages. And in case of Python, Python is one of the high-level language. So you write down the programs in English. Okay, it's like very simple, plain English. Okay, so for human beings, it is very easy to read and write the programs in Python. So these are some examples of machine code, machine language. Everything is written with the zeros and ones. Okay, but so machines can easily understand the meaning of this, but for human beings, it is very difficult to understand this one. For human beings, we want to express everything like this one. Then probably that will be easier than zeros and ones. So Python or some other high-level languages have some syntax like this. Depending on the languages, say C and Python, they are both high-level languages, and they allow something like some structure like this, but the syntax is different. In human languages, the syntax for English and the syntax for, say, French are different. Some are shared, but some are different, right? So, and say, syntax for Korean is totally different from the syntax for the English or the Chinese, right? So, different languages, different programming languages have different syntax, okay? And you need to follow the structure, so you need to follow the syntax. Okay, exactly. Anyway, between these two, if you write down the programs using the high-level languages, as I said, we need some translation between your high-level programs and the machine languages, because your computers can handle only the machine code. Okay, it cannot handle these high-level languages. So we need to translate somehow. And depending on the language, some program performs a translation called compiling. Some programming languages have a translation called an interpretation. Python uses interpreter. C or C++ use the compiling. They have a translation called a compiler. They are slightly different, okay, at this point. So, but talking about those will be beyond the scope of this class. So if you want to know a little bit further regarding the distinction between these two, you can search the Google. But the point is, in case of compiling, okay, your code is optimized for your hardware in some sense, so that your code is faster. Okay, it will be very fast. So if you write the same code, but one in C++ and one in Python, after compilation, the code from the C++ will perform faster than the code written in Python. Okay, but anyway, Python uses something called interpreter to translate your code to the machine language. So Python is slightly slower than C++. Okay. But anyway, we are going to use the Python. So Python, which was created by the Guido van Rossum, some Dutch programmer, in the early 1990s. Okay, and yeah, it is a fun fact that this Python is named for this British comedy show, not the name of the snake. Okay, and Python is as I said, it is a higher level language. So meaning we write down the code in plain English. And it is interpreted language, so it is not using a compiler, but it is using something called an interpreter. So if you actually install the Python on your laptop, then that is installing this interpreter. Okay? So that is slightly different from C or Java, which use the compiler. But anyway, it is very powerful, and yeah, as I said, about 10 years ago, the C++, C was the top language about 10 years ago. But these days, C is around top 5 or 6, something like that. The Python became number 1. It is very powerful, and it is the cross-platform language. So meaning, if you have a computer using Mac OS, Windows, or if somebody uses the Linux, say Debian, you can use your code in any places. So if you have multiple tablets, then you can make a code, say, from the Windows laptop, and then run your code on the MacBook Pro, something like that, or Mac server, the Linux server. So it is cross-platform, and the language is free and open source. So anyone can use, modify, or contribute to Python for free. Because of these features, there are lots of users around the world. So if you have any question or problem regarding this Python, you can search the web, and you can always, in most cases, you can find the answer. Now, here are how to run Python in this class. So as I said, previously last year when I teach this class, the same class, I explained how to download and install Python from this website. And I explained how to install some editor called, say, PyCharm. Okay. So I explained those, but so if you want to install this Python on your laptop, you can go to this website and you can download any version, but if you please download version 3, okay? There are also Python version 2, which the syntax for Python version 2 is not consistent with Python 3. So if you make some code in following the instruction guidelines for Python version 2, that does not work on the Python version 3. So you need to download the version 3 of the Python from this website, and you need to install certain program called an editor. And in the past, I recommended the PyCharm. That is a free editor. Okay, you can download this from their website, and you can use this PyCharm to make a code. So in the past, I used this one, but as I said, since the installation of these two programs caused many problems, so this year I changed the policy, and we are going to use the Google Colab. So Google Colab is a cloud-based coding environment provided by Google, and since no installation is required, it is very simple to use, and you can write and run the code directly on this website. So you can go to this colab.google.com or colab.research.google.com, and if you sign in with your Google account, you can use it for free. And okay, as I will show, there are actually several ways to run the Python code. One, if you install the Python on your laptop, then you can open some window within, okay, something like a terminal, okay, or prompt in Windows. It is similar to prompt. And if you open that account, the window, and then if you run the Python, then it will introduce some interactive session, meaning you can type the Python command directly, and Python will show you the output. It will do something directly there, okay? So you can just type one command at a time, and Python will give you the result, and then you can provide another instruction or command, then the Python will give you back another result, and so on. So you can perform this task interactively, okay? So, but the problem is that the codes should be very simple. If we have a very long programs, this interactive session may not be that simple enough in that case. So if you have a very long program, usually you save it as a file, similarly to the MS Word file, okay? But you have this file, and then you provide this whole file directly to the Python. Then Python will interpret all the commands, okay, one by one, and then provide a single output, okay? So there are two ways. You can open some interactive session. I will show you later. So you can type one line at a time. Then Python will execute it immediately and provide a certain output. So if your program is short, or if you want to check something quickly, then you can open this interactive session and then you can run it, okay? But in most cases, you will make a program as a file. You can save it as a file, and then you will provide that file directly to the Python interpreter, okay? Then Python interpreter will execute all the commands mentioned in the script, and then provide a certain output, okay? And in case of Google Colab, okay, it is a notebook environment. So what it does is, it is a notebook. So you can write some code there directly. You can also write down some text if you want. And then when Python executes, when Google Colab executes certain commands, and if it provides certain output, that output will be saved there. So even when you log out and then reopen that notebook, that output will be saved there. So whenever you open that file, okay, you can always check your output. Okay? You can draw certain graph within this notebook, and then that graph will be still there whenever you open it. So it provides some notebook environment. So there will be, you can write some codes there directly. And when Python provides a certain output, the outputs, including all these graphs and the numerical calculation results, will be saved there. And then, as I will show later, you can write down certain documentation. Okay, so we will use this Google Colab as our primary environment in this class. So it's like a word processor. I will show you, but it does more. Okay. So you can make a code, you can make some text. Okay. I will distinguish these two in a moment after this break. Okay. And using this Google Colab does not require any installation. You can just open your web browser, go to the Colab site, and then if you log into your account, Google account, you can. If you do not log into your Google account, then whatever you write on the Google Colab won't be saved. So if you log in with your Google account, I'm not sure whether you can use this Google Colab without logging in, but if you log into the Google account and then visit this website, then whatever you write down will be saved in your Google Drive. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Questions? Okay, then. Okay, let us take a break for 10 minutes, and then after the class, after the break, let me open this file and then explain regarding how to use this Google Colab, and then let me continue. Okay, any questions? Is the speed okay? Am I too slow? Am I fast? Okay. Okay, then let us take a break for 10 minutes. Okay, so I just mentioned I briefly explained these files. Okay, I briefly explained. So please read the file yourself, and then please try to follow the instructions. And if I made any mistake with the file, please let me know. Okay, I think I followed all the procedures correctly, but I'm not 100% sure about these guidelines. So if I made any mistake, please let me know. So if you use this, and if you do not want to use this Google Colab, but if you want to install the Python yourself onto your laptop, that is fine. And in that case, you can just submit this Python script directly. Okay. So if you use your own computers or with your Python, then your files will be in your computer. But if you followed my suggestion and use the Google Colab, then probably your files will be in your Google Drive. Okay, so it will be on the Google Drive. So please do not submit this notebook file itself, but just Python script. Okay, and this is optional, but usually if you have many programs or many files on your Google Drive, then it might be better to have a separate folder on your Google Drive, okay? And then you can save all the files related with this class under that folder. So here's my suggestion. Okay. So if you use the Google Colab, so it's similar to Google Docs. So all the main software program will be on the server, and you have your own files, the documentation files or program codes on your Google Drive. So those are separated. Okay. You can construct a similar structure system on your computer, on your desktop or the laptops. Okay, but you don't have to these days. Okay, you can put all these files on the cloud, and then you can run it directly there. Okay. There are merits and demerits with this, but at this point, okay, that might be simpler for the novices. Okay. Now, let me introduce the first function we want to consider. That is the print function. Okay, so we want to consider some function called the print. And when I say the output, that means we want to display certain text or certain values to the user on the screen. Okay. So that's the main outlet for this information. So when I call print, by default, if the expression is appropriate, this text or certain values of some expression will be shown on your screen. Okay? Later we will modify that part, modify that direction, but today when I use the print function, some information will be displayed on your screen. Okay? And this print function is a built-in command. So whenever you have a Python environment, you can use this print function. Okay, so in programming, text is called a string. Okay, so and if I want to define a string, okay, I need to enclose certain text using quotes, double quotes or single quote. So if I want to use the print function, I can call print with this parenthesis, and inside the parenthesis I need to give certain text data or expression. You may provide text data, meaning certain texts are enclosed within this double quote or single quote. So that means this text will be displayed on your screen. So if you type this first line, and then if you click this triangle button at the top of the web browser, then just beneath this code cell, you will see an output like this. When I call this print with some numeric value without this quote, then this value will be displayed. So if I call print with 2026, then 2026 will be displayed. If I give some numeric expression like 10 plus 5, then this 10 plus 5 will be executed. Then the final result will be displayed on your screen. So Python is you may consider this as Python is a very large calculator which can handle many numerical expressions. It can handle some text. Okay? So that's the usage of the Python. Now, when I say you need to follow the rules exactly, please note that this print, the name of the function, those letters are all in lowercase. So if you by any chance type, say, uppercase P with RINT, say 1, Python will complain. It will give an error message, okay? It will stop there without performing anything further. Okay? So the uppercase P is not allowed. If you say if you say show, say 1, okay, for human beings, okay, this may be interpreted, okay, but in case of the programming language, that is not allowed. Okay? So you need to call the names of the functions exactly, agreed among the people. So we need to use print, not other names, okay? Every character in lowercase, okay? And I said, I need to put this parenthesis. In some earlier version, Python version 2, the parenthesis was optional. But in Python version 3, this is mandatory. Okay? You need to call Python with the parenthesis. And inside the parenthesis, you need to provide some text or numeric expressions or values. Okay? Then those inside the parenthesis will be displayed on your screen. That's how we use the print function. And probably you will use this print function quite often. Now, in case of string, I said everything inside the double quote or single quote will be regarded as a text of string of text. So string is one of the data types that Python provides, and it can contain literally any character you can type on your keyboard, which includes letters, digits, or some even special characters may be included. And to tell Python something is a string, it must be wrapped in quotes. Single, double, or even triple quotes are allowed. So here, I have some expression inside the double quotes. Okay? Then this will be whole expression starting from W to this exclamation mark. Everything will be displayed on your screen. In the second line, I have some expression including some special symbols. Everything between two double quotes will be regarded as a text string. So those will be printed on your screen. On the third print call, I have even space. So even though it is not shown on the screen, when I call the third print, it will print the space. Okay, first of all. Secondly, when I call this print on the left-hand side, so if I call 3 print, then each character string will be displayed on each line. I mean, once welcome to class of 2026 is displayed on the screen, when I call the second print, this math and AI, that line will be written, displayed on the next line. Okay? This print, the second print, will display this statement text not on the first line after this 2026, but this math and AI will be printed on the second line. And the third print call will print this space on the third line, even though it is not shown there, okay? So that's what print does by default. And as I said, if you want to define strings, there are several ways. Python allows you to enclose strings using single quote, double quotes, or even triple quotes. Okay? And the opening quote must be the same as the closing quote. So if you start with a double quote, you must end with a double quote. If you start with a single quote, you must end with a single quote. Okay? So, for example, if I have hello world, then if I start with a double quote, you must end with a double quote. And that is exactly the same as enclosing that text with a single quote. So both will print this hello world, okay? Then why do we need both ways to define quotes? There are several reasons, but what if I want to a certain text which has some single quote like this in it? Okay, so in that situation, if I use only a single quote, so here, if I have, instead of double quote here, if I had single quote, the problem is the Python will interpret everything between two single quotes, starting from H up to this space will be regarded as one character string. And then this text starting with P ending at this period will be regarded as another text. Okay, so you put two character strings together, attach it, okay? Then Python will not handle that kind of expression. So Python will give you an error message. So if your text has some single quote, okay, or if your text has some, say, apostrophe, then you need to enclose that expression with a double quote. Okay? So that's why we allow several different ways to define strings. In case of triple quote, when I say triple, then triple double or triple single. Okay? So here I have triple double. Okay? Then you can write down the expressions in multiple lines. So I can call print with these 3 lines of text if I use triple quotes. So here I have triple double quotes. You may simply change this with triple single quotes if you want. Then you can print multiple lines on your screen. Okay? Well, some people may call this as a docstring, not the character strings, but anyway, it is similar. So let me call this as a text string. Anyway, the point is, there are 4 ways. You can use double quote, single quote. Those will define text in a single line. If you have triple double or triple single quotes, you can have single line as well as multiple lines. So if your text has some, say, single quote, then you need to enclose those text with, say, double quotes. Well, if your text has a double quote in it, then you can enclose it with a single quote. And as I said, you can define quotes with triple single or triple double. Then you can define character strings, just a single line text as well as multi-line text. Those can be defined with this triple quotes. And if you want to use this print function, you need to call its name, okay? So if you want to write this, so if you write the name of the function, then that will call that function, okay? So it will ask the Python interpreter to perform the action defined by this function. So in case of the print function, it will display this text on your screen. Later, we will modify this behavior somehow, but today we will consider this. Okay? And by default, the text or numeric values will be displayed on your screen. And later, after the midterm, we will modify that part as well. And by default, whenever it prints something, okay, it will go to the next line. So when you print this, once hello world is printed, okay, your computer will go to the next line. Meaning, if you run these 3 codes, these 3 lines will be generated. Now, when you look at the output on this screen, you can see only the character letters, right? But you can display the hidden characters, right, in your computer. So if you look at, so once this line is displayed, when I say you go to the next line, then there is some hidden character here, okay, which is usually described by \n. So you put some hidden, this symbol that is not displayed here by default. So if you have this output, if you copy this on your MS Word, and then if you turn on the hidden characters, then you will see this new line character there. Okay? So each time you call print, the text is displayed on a new line by default. By default. And this default can be changed later. And Python automatically adds a return new line character right after this. So in case of the first line, right after D, it will print new line character, which is not shown here. And after the second line, when Python, right after Python is displayed, right after this period, Python will put this new line character. And we are learning to end, after this exclamation mark, you will see this \n new line character, which is usually obtained when you hit the Enter key. Okay. So the actual output will be this. Okay, even though these new line characters are, so this symbol is called a new line character. It is not shown, but when you look at this from the text editor, okay, it will put, so having this new line character is simply adding this return key. So if you hit the Enter key, you go to the next line, right? So that same output is obtained by having this new line character. So whenever your print displays something, okay, on your screen, okay, it will go to the next line. So this new line is added. Now, we will consider something called comments. So what is a comment? Comment is it is a text. Okay? It is a text. And that is a text that is completely ignored by Python interpreter. Okay? And it is used only for human beings. Okay? So here, if I write down something after this symbol hash mark, okay, the text will be regarded, that will be called comment, and my Python interpreter will ignore that text. Okay? Ignore. So in this code, this is a single line comment in English, that line is comment. Python will ignore this because it is following this hash mark. Then why do I use this if the Python interpreter does not recognize this one? That is for human beings. Okay? If you write down some code, for example, if I create certain recipe, okay, and if you share your recipe with your colleagues, then you need to explain why your recipe works. Okay? Or sometimes for yourself, if you write down some code and if you reopen it, say in 3 months or in a year, you may forget why you constructed such and such statements. Okay? So for your information or for your colleagues, okay, you write down something. Okay, I write down this based on this theorem. I write down this information from some newspaper or some certain website. Okay? So you write down some information. So those comments are not required for the execution of the code, but with those comments, the code will be it'll be very easy to understand the meaning of each line in this recipe or code. So I will use these comments quite often, okay, for instruction purpose. Okay, so you will see many comments in my code example, and sometimes single line may not be enough. Okay, so in that case, you may have multi-line comments with multi-hash mark. So some statement on certain line, if the single line is not sufficient, then you can continue on the next line if you start with hash mark. Okay, so you can put hash mark on each line, then each line will be regarded as a comment. Or you can use triple quote. So you can put two triple quotes, triple single or triple double, and then you can write down several lines. Then those will be discarded. Now sometimes you can put your comment, okay, in the middle of the line. So given certain expression, and then if you put hash mark, then everything you have after this hash mark will be discarded by the interpreter. Okay. Usually you can write your comments in English or some other language, say Korean, Japanese, Chinese, French, okay? Any languages can be used for the comment. Usually, okay? But if you install the Python on your computer, okay? And depending on your editor, if you use some Asian language like Chinese, Japanese, and Korean, then you might need to declare that, okay, the comments may be written in one of those three languages, okay? But if you use the Colab, you don't need to declare that kind of stuff. But if you install on your local computer, then you might need to declare that, okay, the comments will be written, say, in Korean. But anyway, so why do we use this comment? To leave notes, explanations, okay, for you or your colleagues. And this is very useful, okay? And single line comment, which may start from the beginning of the line, or you can put this comment in the middle of the middle of the line. Then any text starting with a hash symbol will be discarded. This is just for your comment. And as I said, if you can use triple single or triple double quotes, then for the multi-line comments. So in my code, the actual code is only this part and this part. All the others are the comments, which will be discarded. So from the first print, that hello world will be printed. And in the last line, the end of a page will be displayed on your screen. And as I said, those lines will be displayed on two separate lines. And I will use this comment. Please use these comments as much as possible, but you don't have to write down some trivial statements, okay? So, for example, when I have a code of, say, 5 plus 3, and then if I call print, okay, and then if I say type the addition of 5 and 3, that kind of statement is meaningless, right? So you write down some crucial information as a text, not this a trivial one. Okay, now sometimes, moments ago, okay, just a second ago, I used print 5 and 3. Five plus 3. Okay, so Python will display the value 8 on your screen. Now, if this 5 or 3 doesn't have any meaning, then that code is fine. Print of 5 plus 3 will be appropriate. But sometimes, this 5 has some meaning. Say, this 5 may be the number of, say, items I want to purchase. Or 3 has another meaning. Okay? In that case, probably I might need to use those information in the future. Okay? Then I need to store that information into the computer program so that I can reuse that information later when it is needed. So this variable acts as a label for a certain specific location in your computer memory, okay, which might be used in the later. So instead of typing this, I can give some name for that value. Or in other words, I can give some name for exactly location where this 5 is saved in your computer memory. Okay. So I want to give some label, some name for that value or certain information, so that that information, that name can hold that value or text or whatever. Okay. So each variable will have a name, that will be called a label. And then probably I need to provide certain information that you want to save or direct. So if I give some name and some value or the information, okay, and this value can change sometimes. You cannot change in some situations. So, in order to define a variable, in order to assign certain name for a certain expression or information or memory in your computer system, we use this equals sign. So in computer programming, in almost every language, not only the Python, in C or some other languages, if you see this equals sign, that is for assignment, not comparison symbol. Okay? So, given this equals sign, okay, on the left-hand side, you always put the name of the variable. And on the right-hand side, you provide the information you want to store. So for example, in the first line, I have age is 15. So on the left-hand side, I have age. That is the name of the variable. That is the label. 15 is the value I want to store under the name of age. Okay. It does not compare whether age is equal to 15. If we want to compare, two signs, then you need to use two equals sign, which we will study later. Okay? But if you see a single equals sign, then it will assign whatever you have on the right-hand side. The final result will be saved under the name appearing on the left-hand side. Okay? So on the left-hand side, you must have a single variable name. On the right-hand side, you may have a text, you may have a numeric value, or some expressions. If you have some numeric expression, some final result will be saved. So if I have age equals 15, and then if I call print with the name, then the value or the information stored under that name, age, will be displayed on your screen. Since age has the value 15, when I call this print, this 15 will be displayed. In the third line, I have a product equals 4 times 7. So product is the name I want to use. 4 times 7 is the information I want to save. So 4 times 7 will be calculated. Final result will be 28. Then that 28 will be given to the variable named product. So on the fourth line, if I call print with that product, then the value of the product, which is 28, will be displayed. In the fifth line, I have age equals age plus 1, which does not make any sense in mathematics, right? In mathematics, that is totally wrong, right? Age cannot be the same as age plus 1, but in programming language like Python, it makes sense. What it means is, if you have some expression on the right-hand side, as I said, the final result will be calculated and then saved under the name appearing on the left-hand side. So it first evaluates the right-hand side. The right-hand side is age plus 1. Age was previously had value 15. So when I say age plus 1, the value of age is taken from the memory. So age plus 1, so that means 15 plus 1 will be calculated. So final result is 16. This 16 will be given to the age variable. So previously in your computer, so here is the memory of your computer. And there is a location having the value 15, and we gave the label age for this value. So that value is stored under the name of age. Okay? So that's why when I call this print in the second line, this 15 is displayed. Now in the fifth line, I consider age plus 1. So when I evaluate this right-hand side, age plus 1 will take the value 15. Okay, so this will evaluate 15 plus 1. Final result is 16. And that 16 will be given to the location in your memory under the label age. So that means this 15 will be replaced by 16. Okay? So that's why in the last line, when I call the print age, even though that command is the same as the second line, it displays now this modified value, 16, not 15. Do you follow me up to this? Questions? So this fifth line is very important, okay? So you will have something like this quite often. Actually, most program lines will be like this. So you define certain variable with a certain value, and then you do something, okay? That's what many programs do, okay? So if I have equals sign, please remember that is for the assignments, not comparison. Okay. Python classifies variables into two categories. There are several groupings. Okay, one is primitive type, okay, which will be one of these, and there are some complex structures called non-primitive types. We will study those later. Okay, And today we will focus on these primitive data types. So depending on the information that this variable contains, the variable will be one of these four types. If your variable has information and if that information is purely text strings, then we say this variable is string type. If your variable has a numeric value and if your numeric values is just one of the integers, then that variable will be of integer type. Now, if your numeric value includes the decimal point, okay, decimal point, then that numeric value will be called a floating point number, and in that case, your variable will be called floating point type or simply float type. Okay, so if I define a variable with integer 1, then this A will be integer type. If I define B with, say, 3.14, then B is a float type. If I define C with just a 3 dot, it is a float type. Okay? So the distinction depends on the existence of a decimal point. So if your numeric value has a decimal point, then even 3.0 will be regarded as a float type, not integer type. Okay? Mathematically, it is an integer, but in case of the programming language, if your numeric value has a decimal point, it is a float point. Okay? And there is one more variable type called Boolean. Boolean can take only true or false. Okay? So it can be either true or false. And T and F in uppercase, not lowercase. Okay? And if you have a variable, there is another built-in function called type. And then if you provide the name of the variable inside the parenthesis, then type will give you, okay, the type of the variable. So here are some examples. So if I define message with this, then since I enclose the text with double quotes, this message will be a string type. So if I call type with this message, then it will return string. So if I call print on top of this, then this string will be displayed on your screen. If I define student count variable with 35, since the 35 doesn't have any decimal point, this is an integer value. So if I call the same structure, the print with type of this variable, then Python tells you that it is an integer type. If your numeric value has a decimal point, even though it is just a 4, mathematically 4.0 is the same as 4, if that expression contains the decimal point, then this GPA will be a float type variable. So please be careful. And if is defined by true with uppercase T, then this is variable with a Boolean type. When you create the variables, okay, you need to follow some rules for naming. This naming is very important. First, you can combine some letters, numbers, and underscores. No other symbols. Okay? No hyphen. Okay? No question mark. Okay? So no other symbols are allowed, but only the underscore. And the name of the variable cannot start with a numeric digit. So you cannot start with a digit. That means you can start the name with the letters or underscore. And the case matters. So the lowercase and uppercase are different in Python. So if you type score with uppercase S or lowercase s or even all uppercases, they are all different names. Okay? And people prefer descriptive names if possible. Okay? So instead of A equals to 5, say GPA equals to 5 is better, is preferred. Okay? For yourself or for the collaboration with your colleagues. Okay? So this is preferred, but not must. Okay? But it is case sensitive. Okay, so lowercase is totally different from uppercase. And you cannot start with a numeric integer. And you can use letters, digits, and underscores. So something like these are some examples of the names of the variables. So if I define score with lowercase s and uppercase s, you are defining two different variables. So when I call them, their values are displayed. Okay? They are totally different variables. Please be careful. Now, I wrote down some examples which are not allowed as the names of the variables. Okay? So, for example, you cannot have the hyphen between two words. You cannot start the name with a numeric integer. Or you cannot have space between two words. Okay? Those are not allowed in Python. Usually, when you name the variable, and if you combine multiple words, okay, you can combine them in camel case or snake case. Meaning, when you combine two words, first of all, the starting letter is almost, in most cases, start with lowercase. Okay? And then, in case of the camel case, you attach several words, and the starting letter of the second or third or some following words, they start with uppercase. In case of snake case, you combine all the words with underscores, and you write down everything in lowercase. So in Python, snake case is preferred in Python community. Okay? But it is not a must. It is just a recommendation. So you can use one of these two types, camel case or snake case, or if you want, you do not have to follow this. Okay? You can write down, you can create your own names using your own policy. Okay? But this is what many people are doing. So, this is just one of two main conventions in naming in Python, okay? And more Pythonic means, more people in Python community are using this snake case, okay? But, so as you get experienced, okay, and if you define more and more variables, then probably you want to follow one of these two, conventions. But at this point, you don't have to follow this. Okay? Now, when I define variables, there are some reserved names which you cannot use as the names of the variables. So, those are called keywords. So these keywords are very special, reserved words, which you cannot use as the names of the variables. So in case of a print, that was reserved as the name of the function in Python. So you cannot use Python, okay, and print as the name of the variable. But in case of print with uppercase P is a fine name, because this uppercase P is different from lowercase p. So when I say print everything in lowercase, that is reserved. But in case of print with uppercase P, that is not reserved. So you can use this print as, say, 5, that is fine. Okay? But in case of some reserved words, something like if, else, true and false, and or not, for, while, these are some reserved words called keywords. And you cannot use those as the names of the variables. Now, we will consider some functions later in detail, very detailed, okay? And function is a block of codes which is created, okay, to use these blocks several times in several places. So we create a function to reuse certain commands in several places. So in case of a print, we create a function print to display the contents of certain text or variable on your screen. And that task is repeatedly wanted in programming. So that's why we create a function named print. If you want to run certain code just once, you don't have to create a function. But if you want to reuse certain blocks, certain commands multiple times, then probably you want to give some name to those blocks of commands, and so that we can recall those functions, okay, at several places. So, and if I have those functions, usually it is very easy to read and easy to handle your program. So we will study some simple ones this week, probably. And next week, probably we will study how to make a function. And then on the fourth week, we will develop a little bit further, and then we will consider something called an object. So that will be a little bit advanced version of the function. Okay? So we will do that later. So at this point, in chapter 1, I'm just explaining what a function is, but you don't have to worry about this. So we will study this in detail, very detailed later. And as I said, printing variables is a very common task you need to perform. Okay? And you can display the value stored inside the variable by passing the name of the variable to the print function. And as I said, you need to type print in lower cases as exactly as is shown. You cannot replace this print with, say, display, write, or some other names. Those are not allowed in Python. You need to use only print in lower cases. And in case when you call this print, there are several ways. You can directly call the print with text enclosed in this double quote or single quote or triple quote. You can call the numeric value. Now, if I have some, say, apple without quote symbol, then Python will assume that this apple is the name of the variable. If that variable was defined previously, then this print function will take that value from the memory and then display the value of this Apple variable. But if it was your intention to display APPLE on your screen, then this will cause an error. Okay? If you want to display just the text itself, you need to enclose the text by some single or double quote. So please be careful. Okay? Without this quote symbol, this apple is the name of the variable. That's what this print function will assuming. Okay? And whenever this print displays the value of the variable or text or numeric value on the screen, it will go to the next line, meaning it will display new line character. So once this text is displayed, at the end of the line, the print will automatically put this new line character at the end. Okay? So that when you call this print in the second line, this numeric value 3 will be displayed on the second line, not on the first line. So please be careful, okay? And please, if you have some time today, please open this Colab account, the Google account, and then you can play with some Colab yourself, okay? Just play with it, say 30 minutes or so. You can create certain something on the code cell, click the button to see the output, and if you encounter any error message, okay, please try to handle that error message somehow. If you still have that problem and if you cannot handle that error message, let me know. You can visit my office, you can email me, okay? You can make a snapshot with your cell phone and you can email me. Then I can easily help you. Okay? Questions? Okay, then, probably, but if I finish this section tomorrow, probably I will upload this video lectures on the YouTube, okay? But at this point, since I didn't complete this section yet, so I will not upload the video lecture on the YouTube, but tomorrow, if I complete this file, then probably I will upload whatever I told you today will be available on the YouTube website. Thank you. Okay, let's call it a day here and see you tomorrow. Okay? To print certain values of the variables, then you can give the name of the variable to the print function. So when I call the print function, you can give the name of the variable. Okay, and what print does is it will show the contents of that variable onto your screen, and then it will additionally put this new line character at the end of whatever you have, the text or numeric value or whatever. Once certain value of the variable is displayed on the screen, it will additionally put this new line character at the end, so that when you call the print one more time, that output will be displayed on the following line. So if I call, say, print with text string, then in that case, text without this the double quotes, just the pure text, text will be displayed on the screen, okay? And then at the end of this T, this print will put some new line character. And then on the next line, the numeric value 3 will be displayed. And then it will add a new line character as well. And then, so it goes to the next line, the third line, it will print the value of apple, okay? If apple is created previously, okay? So that's what this print does. So here is some example. So suppose that I have two variables, course name and class size. So course name is the text string, and class size a variable with integer value. And if I call print with those names of the variables, then its value. In case of the text string, the Python without this double quote will be displayed. In case of numeric variable like integer or float, its value, in this case 35, will be displayed on the screen. And as I said, even though for human eyes, we just look at just Python or 35, but there is a hidden new line character. So \n. That \n, I will explain that \n later, but this \n is representing one character, new line character. So when you type the enter key on your keyboard, it will put this new line character. So even though it is not seen, we have a new character. So with this \n, and right after this 35, we have additional \n character representing this new line. So that will be appended to these outputs. Now, if I call print with text string as we did, then just the text from C to E will be displayed, okay, not the code. So that's what print does at this point. Oh, and as you probably know, I uploaded these lectures on the YouTube. So if you want to rewatch those, you can visit the YouTube website. And the link is introduced in the LMS website. Now, sometimes we want to print the values of multiple variables. Okay, in that case, you can give the names of the variables into the print, okay, and the names should be separated by comma. So you can pass multiple values into print function. Then all the values will be displayed on one line, okay, and then at the end of whole things, print will put just one single new line character. Okay? So you can pass multiple values into this print. Okay? And by default, Python will insert a single space between two adjacent values. And okay, so this space will be inserted just between any two adjacent values, okay? And that space is called SEP, separator operate the argument. And if you want, you can change this space with any character. Okay? So space will be inserted between any two values. So when I say multiple values can be given, that means I can call print and then say I can give some text string like hello, and then another text to say word. But when I give multiple items, you need to separate them with a comma. If you want, you can give some other values, say 5, 10, some values may be given. Okay, you may combine multiple types, it doesn't matter. Then hello, word, 5 and 10 will be displayed on your screen. Okay, and between hello and word, there will be a single space. Between word and 5, there will be another space. And between 5 and 10, we will have another space. And right after 10, some new line character will be appended. Okay? And This space is called this SEP argument, okay, separator. And if you want, you can, if you do not like this space, you can change this space with any character or any expression. So if you want to use this, the separator, the SEP parameter, you can put some values or variable names or whatever, okay? You may call print with a single value, multiple values, okay? And then at the end, you put SEP equals and the separator you want to use. Okay? So here is an example. So if I call print with, say, text strings, say 0, 1, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, then those three, okay, first of all, these are text strings because I'm using double quotes. So 3 text strings will be displayed, and between any 2 adjacent values, we have a space. So between 101 and 1234, we have a space, and we have one more space between 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay? Now, if I call print with the same values, but if I add SEP parameter, okay, and if I put, say, hyphen, then between any 2 adjacent items, we have a hyphen here. If I have SEP with, here, I have just the double quotes attached, together, meaning my SEP will be an empty set, nothing, okay? So that means between P and Y, I do not want to put anything between these 2 letters. And between Y and T, okay, I do not want to insert anything. So between any 2 adjacent items, okay, I do not insert anything, so that this is from P to N, they are all attached together without any space in between. Okay? Or if I put new line character as my SEP value, then between item 1 and item 2, you put new line character. That means even though I call this print with these multiple values, so in theory, all these values must be printed, okay, must be displayed on a single line due to this SEP value, okay? I need to put new line character between item 1 and item 2. So right after this item 1 is displayed, okay, print will put new line character, meaning it goes to the next line, and then it will print item 2, and then it will insert new line character so that item 3 will be displayed on the following line. So even though I call this print once with 3 values, those 3 values are displayed in 3 different lines. And that happens because I define SEP with the new line character. Okay? So that's the effect of SEP. Okay. Now, as I said, by default, print function always ends with a hidden new line character so that the print function will move the cursor to the next line. So if you call the print function one more time, then the values will be displayed on the second line. And this new line character is called end argument. You can change this as well. So by default, once everything is printed on your screen, print will go to the next line because the default value of the AND parameter is the new line character. But if you want, you can change this value with whatever character. Okay, so if you want to use this AND character, if you want to redefine this, you can put multiple values, and then at the end you can call AND equals, and then you can provide a certain character you want to use instead of this new line character. So as an example, if I print hello and word, right after hello, okay, new line character will be inserted. So this second print function will display this word on the second line. That's what happens here. Okay, but if you redefine this AND parameter, so in this case, I put space. Then right after this hello is displayed, this print will insert space instead of new line character. And then it will wait for the next comment. So when you call this print with word, this word will follow this space. So hello and space is displayed from this third print function. And then this fourth print will display this word right after the space. And then since in the case of the fourth print, since AND parameter is not set, it will go to the next line. And then here, if I call print loading, and then if AND is defined by 3 dots, then right after loading, 3 dots will be displayed, and then my cursor will wait here for the next print comment. So if you call the print with, say, complete, then this complete will follow the 3 dots. So in this way, you can manipulate the output of the printer function somehow. You can change this SCP parameter or AND parameter. Okay. So please play with this. Okay. And in case of codes, as I said, if you have some text string, okay, you want to print the text string, and if that text string already contains a certain quote or apostrophe, okay, then you need to be careful. Say if I want to print I'm a student, okay, and if I enclose this statement with a single quote, then as I said yesterday, it will cause a problem, because when this opening single quote encounters this another single quote, then this portion will be treated as a single text string. Okay, and in this statement, I have one text string followed by some M and space and A and student, and followed by one more single quote. So Python will be difficult to understand this structure, and it will cause an error message. So if you have a statement like this, and if you want to print this apostrophe or single quote as it is, then instead of using the single quote, you need to use a different quotes like double quotes or triple quotes. So you need to mix this single and double quotes. Okay? Or in case of this single quote in the middle of the text, that can be printed if I have, in case of a single quote, instead of typing just the quote itself, you can put backslash. So you can, if you put backslash and then single quote, then this symbol, even though you have two letters, okay, only single quote will be displayed. And in that case, this single quote won't be recognized as, quote defining a text string. Instead, it will be just recognized as just an ordinary symbol. Similarly for this double quote, if you want to print just the double quote itself, then you can put / double quote. Okay? Or, as I said, you may use the triple quote. So here are some examples. So if I have, say, this statement, then we have a problem, because I have Python with double quotes, and that is enclosed with another double quotes. Then, as I said, the problem is that when this opening double quote encounters this another double quote, then that portion will define an empty string. Okay? Two double quotes will define an empty string. That is followed by certain expression which is not recognized by the Python interpreter. So if you type like this, it will cause a problem. So one way is to replace this double quote to define a text string with a single quote. Okay. Then when this opening single quote beats some expressions, okay, everything will be recognized as text string until it encounters with another single quote. Or you can use this / and double quote. Then this / is not displayed, but only double quote will be displayed as an ordinary character. Or you can use triple quote. So using one of these methods, you can print these double quotes into text string. Now, moments ago, I used the / and quote, and those expressions will be called escape characters. And can you read these characters, letters? Are the size of the fonts okay? Okay. So sometimes, if the size is too small, let me know, okay? And probably in the following slides, I have some quotes, and since quotes are too long, the letters become too small. So I will fix them before our lectures, but anyway, if you think the font size is too small, let me know. Anyway, if sometimes I need to print a certain character itself, and the escape character is a special sequence used to represent some characters, okay, which is very difficult to print or include in a string. And in case of escape characters, every escape character is preceded by a / and then followed by some characters. Okay? Even though this escape characters consist of two or more characters, it will display only one symbol. Okay? So for example, if I want to print a single or double quotes, you can use / double quote or / single quote. If I want to consider a new line character, as we observed, / n will define a new line character. So whenever print function sees that / n, it will go to the next line. If I put / t, it will insert a horizontal tab key. Okay, so usually this tab key will be 4 spaces, okay, but they maybe change it. And if you want to print the backslash itself, you need to put 2 backslashes. Okay, so if you just put backslash only, it will print will cause an error message. Okay, so if you want to print this backslash itself, you need to put 2 backslashes. So those are some examples of escape characters, and if you want to print those symbols, you need to use those escape characters. So when I have this expression, okay, I have one text string. Inside the text string, I have a backslash t, and then backslash double quote, followed by Python, and another backslash double quote. So those 3 backslashes will introduce the escape characters. So the first initial backslash t will print tab key. And then backslash double quote will put this double quote symbol. Then it will be followed by Python. That is followed by another double quote, this one. In line 2, first line, and then you have backslash n. So right after this line, print will print this new line character, which causes moving to the next line. So right after first line, second will be displayed on the following line. And then right after line, we have one more backslash, the new line character. So this third line will be displayed on the next line. So this second print will display these 3 lines. Okay. And in number 3, I have a file path C colon and 2 backslashes here. So even though I have 2 backslashes, okay, it will be replaced by a single backslash. Okay. So if you want to print the web address, so if you say https colon 2 backslashes and so on, in order to print these 2 backslashes, you need to put 4 backslashes. And well, regarding these objects, okay, at this point, just strings or variables, those will be called objects in Python, and that objects will be considered in note 16 or 17. Okay, so in the 4th week we will consider these objects a little bit, okay, if time allows. Okay, so I will talk about this object later. I mean, what an object is and how to define certain object and the difference between objects and some other stuff like class or something. So we will consider these topics later in detail. Okay, at this point you can discard these statements. Okay, and you can just remember that strings or some integer variables or float variables, those will be called objects in Python. Okay, and then I will clarify those concepts later in the 4th week. Okay. So at this point, let me skip this portion. Okay. And given some text strings, okay, and there are several ways to modify the text. So given text string, say text as my text variable, say suppose that A has some text but only T in the uppercase. Given this, sometimes I want to change all the letters into upper cases. Sometimes I want to change everything to lower cases. Okay? Or if I have, say, text to 1, text to 2, something like this, I want to change everything to lower letters, lower cases. Sometimes I want to change only the first word, first character in each word to uppercase, and so on. Or sometimes I want to eliminate some space between two letters and two words, and so on. So there are several ways to manipulate the contents of the text string. Okay, and we will study these methods later in detail. Okay, I will show you many examples. Okay, so at this point, in case of strings, we can manipulate its cases somehow, or we can modify the contents somehow. Okay, but we will consider these topics later as well. This section just introduces, okay, that in case of string, so we will consider an object later, and strings have some methods which will change the contents of the text strings. But when I say change, I need to be careful because it may be confusing. So at this point, let me just say that there are several, so here methods means there are several ways to modify the contents of the text strings. Okay, those will be considered later. Okay, so here is just an example. If I have some text string, and if you look at this text string, it starts with some spaces in front of K, and between Korea and university, there is another space. Okay. If I call certain function named strip, then that space in front will be eliminated. In case of up, if I call upper or lower, it will change all the letters to upper cases or lower cases. Okay. Something like this. What can be done, okay? But as I said, this will be done in more detail later. I'm just showing some examples, okay? So that will be our future slides. We will revisit those examples later. Okay? Anyway, any questions up to this?